we have a guest.
Oh, yeah?
Hi, Pat. Pat Maris is here.
Nice.
Thank you for joining us. And I see you already have your microphone and your video off. Thank you. That was one of the settings I've learned in the last couple of weeks, was how to automatically turn off everybody's mics and videos.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because for a while, everybody was coming in and, you know, they were joining in and sometimes talking. So welcome, Sue Foley and
Hello.
Mike Flanigin. So glad to have the two of you here.
Hi.
It's Diane. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm hanging in there.
All right.
You know, trying to keep up with all the new normal.
How's
How
that?
about y'all?
Oh, about the same. Doing what you're doing, trying to hang in and hang on.
Uh-huh.
We're doing pretty good. Actually, we're getting used to it. We may have retired.
We're not sure.
We don't know if we can do much more than go swing in Barton Springs and get a Sandy's ice cream cone at this point. That may be all we're good for from now on.
Well, and that's not actually such a bad life either.
I'm pretty good.
Exactly. And so, Mike, you just did a show with Jimmy.
Yeah.
Over at Antone's.
Yeah, we played at Antone's this last weekend. That was the first weekend that they opened. So, yeah, it was great. We had, you know, the audience was great. People were so happy to see music, and we were happy to play it. So,
right.
Great time. A bunch of people came out. W.C. Clark sat in, and Soul Man Sam, Gary Clark Jr.
Oh, nice.
You know, I think we just had a great time. So. It was good to be out and playing, you know, again. I know that's the goal, you know, for all of us right now.
Right.
But
yes, I know it is. I just know that it scares me.
Well, I think that's the thing. Like my motto for during all of this is that there's 3 ways you can live, and it's there's only 3 ways to go. No risk, reasonable risk, and high risk. That's your options right now. So I think, you know, as far as playing live music, you know, there's a reasonable risk, just like going into a restaurant or anything else. It can be done right. So I think places like Antone's, Sagebrush, and I know Steve at the Continental has been trying to figure out how to do it. So everyone's trying to figure out how to do it and do it in a safe way.
Right. Yeah, it's been challenging, to say the least, especially with the Continental Club and the gallery, because our capacity is not that big to begin with, and we don't have outdoor areas.
Right.
So, you know, we're just kind of hard pressed to come up with anything that would work for us.
Right. Because the math has to work too, you know. That's...
Exactly. And you know, even if we're at 75%, I'm not certain that we would actually be able to provide the safety that is necessary for our staff, for our musicians, and for our customers. Seaboys may be a little bit different. We may end up seeing that there's something we can do over there, but you know, nobody knows for sure yet.
No. That's true. So,
yeah.
Just crossing our fingers, you know, and I know Steve's working hard on it. And it's tough because the name of the game has always been, what's the name of the game in the club business? Pack the club.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything, and it's not like we were all, you know, millionaires doing that.
Right.
So if it's less than that, you wonder how it's done. So people are trying to figure it out. And, you know, I think they're doing the best they can.
Right. And I think, you know, I am hoping that we're open before spring of 2021, but I don't know how likely that is. It might be for Seaboys, but certainly wouldn't be for the club or the gallery unless something changed drastically at this point.
Right. I feel like I'm talking. Sue's not saying anything.
I was going to say, hopefully, you know, time is passing, so that might come around quicker than we even realized it. We didn't think, when we first got shut down, and you know this, they told us 6 weeks, and we thought that was like going to be an eternity. So,
right. Exactly.
Here we are, 7 months later. Yeah.
So let's move on to some happier stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want to, now, of course, I know a little bit about both of y'all's background, but Sue, let's start with you. When was your first gig?
Whoa, that's a long time ago, Diane.
Yep.
I was 16, so my very first gig, yeah, I started playing guitar when I was 13, but then I did my very first professional paid gig when I was 16.
And was guitar your only instrument, or did you play anything else?
No, I'm a pretty dedicated, strictly guitar player. I don't even really play piano. I picked up a cello a few years ago and I messed around with that, but you know, I just kind of stick with guitar, electric and acoustic. Yeah.
And Mike, how about you? What was your first gig?
My first paid gig, it wasn't until I was, I think, 25. So I was playing guitar at that time, and I was in Dallas and just going to the blues jams with Johnny Moeller and Paul Size and Jay Moeller. And those guys were playing in bands. I wasn't. And then Johnny had to go to California on a little tour with Hook Herrera. So he quit his band and asked if I wanted to play that. So that was my first paid gig. I remember it was at a Holiday Inn in Lancaster. So it was pretty auspicious, but I got a late start. Yeah, I wasn't. Sue got in there pretty early. She's always known what she wanted to do, but
right.
I was had a late start.
At what time did you switch to organ being your primary instrument?
That wasn't until much later. Probably, I'm trying to remember it. It's hard to remember the exact year. It wasn't until I came to Austin and started playing in the house band a little bit at Antone's. Because they had a B3. So right. I just decided to try to play it. And then Doyle Bramall Sr. hired me maybe 2 or 3 months later. I didn't have a B3. I found one, actually. And so my first real paid gig on B3 was with Big Doyle, Little Doyle, and Jim Milan was on bass. It was a Caravan of Dreams. I think it was a Eve gig. But yeah, I wasn't, I probably was 28 or 29 or 30, something like that. Yeah.
And what was the first band that you played in?
The first band on guitar or on organ?
On guitar.
That was a band. Still love the name, and Sue really loves the name. And it was a really popular band in Dallas. It was called the Weebads, Weebads. And Memo Gonzalez was the harmonica player and the singer. And you know, back then you could play every night in Dallas, and it was always a 4-piece band, and every gig was $250, and so everyone made $62.50. You know, as much as you wanted. So there was just tons of gigs, you know.
And Sue, what was the first band you were ever in?
I played in a couple of units, but the first band I was in was called the Blue Lights in Ottawa. That's where I'm from. It was a 5-piece sort of Chicago-style blues outfit with 2 guitar players, harmonica, bass, and drums. So it was a real and that's where I learned all those Chicago blues songs, from Little Walter to Jimmy Rogers and Muddy Waters, and kind of got all my early learning out of the way with that stuff, you know. And
right. That's a good education.
Really good.
And it's good music coming out of Ottawa, out of Toronto, more jazz in Montreal than anything else, but that whole Eastern Canada area had some.
Yeah, we had a lot of Chicago guys coming up there all the time. So they were always up there, and we were really lucky to see
Right.
all those bands, Buddy Guy and Albert Collins, and you know, long before I'd moved to Austin, I'd already seen all those guys because they were up there. James Cotton, they were on that circuit heading up to Ottawa and Toronto. They were there all the time.
I remember when Kenny Neal moved up to Toronto to join Downchild Blues Band.
Right.
Because I was still up in New York then.
Right.
I was on the Montreal. I was 90 miles south of Montreal.
Oh.
That was where my hometown was, on Lake Champlain.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
So I was pretty familiar with a lot of that scene throughout Eastern Canada.
Right. Wow. I had no idea, but I've driven through the area a lot, you know, heading down to Vermont and stuff.
My home is actually Essex, New York, which is directly across the lake from South Burlington, Vermont.
Okay. I've been there. I've definitely been there.
So we would go to Montreal and Burlington before we would ever go to New York City. You know, it took us hours to go to New York City, and Burlington was right across the lake, and Montreal was only an hour and a half away. So
nice. Interesting. I had no idea. I thought I'd only known you from Texas, so.
Well, I've been here since '87, so I got here just before you did, really.
Yeah. Wow.
And I remember when Clifford brought you down here, and that was a smart move on his part.
Smart move on my part to come too.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It worked out for both of you.
Sure did.
So I want to talk a little bit about songwriting. First of all, tell me, what is your approach to songwriting, either of you?
You go first.
I was going to say you go first. I would say Sue's she's more of a songwriter than I am. You know, she's done it for so many years, and she's a great songwriter. You know, she considers herself a songwriter, obviously, which she is. I really don't. I write songs when I have to, or when they just come out. I couldn't just sit down and write a song, like, let's write a song.
Well, you do all the time now. You and Billy. He writes with Billy Gibbons a lot.
Well, maybe Billy will toss around a topic. I have but when someone says songwriter, it sounds like, I mean, it's taken so seriously, not that it shouldn't be, but I think some people would be offended by my approach to songwriting, which is pretty lax, you know.
Well, I'm not sure if that's true, because everyone has a different method for how they write too. And if your method happens to be that you don't write a lot, you're not a prolific writer, but you write with select people, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. I guess there's two ways I write. Sometimes songs just come to me and they're pretty much almost done in my mind. Before I write them down. And then the other way is almost like, you know, working on something. Like if I'm doing something with Gibbons, or I'm working with somebody else where it's more of almost a problem solving game, you know, where they've got part of it. You got to come up with the other part.
Right.
You know, it's those are the two really different ways to write songs. I think it's harder to get a heartfelt song the second way. You know, it's more of a mechanic working on a car, you know.
Right.
And the first way is more of I guess, an engineer dreaming up a car, you know.
Oh, good analogy. I like that.
And I don't know what Sue.
Sue, tell us about your process.
I wish I had a process. I just kind of try things and hope they work. But, you know, at different times, I've been more serious about songwriting than others. But I did notice, like, when I got my first recording contract and I realized how the money was split up in the business, and that if you wrote songs, you'd get more money, like for your records and stuff.
Right.
it's not necessarily as true now than it was, but at the time you could actually do pretty well. So I thought, well, this is how I started writing. Well, I originally started writing just because we didn't have enough material. We used to have to play these long nights, and I didn't have to have enough material at the time, so I would just make up stuff. Mm-hmm. Easy to write blues songs because you can just write 2 lines and rhyme them, and you know, it's not like super you know, it's very simple music in a lot of ways. It's not to say it doesn't have great writers. It really has some of the best writers in the world, but it's not like, you know, difficult style of songwriting. So I started like that. And then after I started recording albums, I realized that I would get paid more. So I started to write songs rather than cover songs. I would write a song like a song instead of covering that song. And then I got more serious about it, and I studied some writers, and I don't know, over the years I've taken it more seriously, but I wish I had a process. My process is just to do it a lot and to get better and to practice it like you practice your instrument, let's say. And if you have an album coming up, if I have an album that we got to record, I'll get more serious about writing and getting material together, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So what song do you wish you had written?
Oh God, a million songs. God, where do I start? You have one?
I'm waiting for your answer.
I don't even. Everything. I wish I'd written everything I like. I mean, anything by Percy Mayfield. I think he's one of the greatest blues songwriters. One of my very favorite. I mean, Send Me Someone to Love, or you know, any of his beautiful songs that have blues but also have beautiful chord changes and just really poetic words. So he's probably a writer that I would aspire to.
Mike, how about you?
Well, I've had a chance to think while she was talking. You know, I guess the first thing that came into my mind was ZZ Top's "I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide," because I love the imagery he uses in that song. Uh-huh. My other thought was Lightning Slim, Brewster Blues, because how can you write a blues and it talks all about kind of all these animals, and he talks about a pink alligator. So I just think that's probably like the ultimate blues song. If you can work in a pink alligator into a blues song, that's pretty cool. So, I might sue.
It's funny because just I think it was yesterday I saw a post from Carrie Baker, who has Conqueroo, the publicity firm, and someone had asked him where he had come up with the name, because they thought he had maybe named it after the band Conqueroo. And he said, oh no, it came from all those early blues guys, because it's like, you know, all of them were talking about all of these Conqueroo root and all of that. And that's exactly where the name of the company came from. So
yeah, those had such great imagery, like especially, I mean, we talked about Lightning Slim, but Lazy Lester, who we all knew for so many years, those songs, you know, they were almost like country songs in a way there. And of course, just all the great blues songs. You know, blues is one of those things that I always think it's impossible to write a good blues song today. Like, I think would be one of the hardest challenges to do. Not that it's impossible, but I mean, how can you compete with I'm a Man, or,
right,
you know, all these great songs that those guys wrote that were, you know, All Your Love, I Miss Love, and Otis Rush, or, you know, Magic
It's hard
Sand.
to breathe new life into it, that's for sure.
Right.
I think that's why blues has just changed so much, because, you know, it's hard to keep repeating the tradition, and it's hard to breathe new life into that sort of format.
Right.
And in a way, it's kind of turned into it's really exactly the same as jazz standards. I mean, I think would be very difficult to write a song, you know, on par with the great jazz standard. They would have the same difficulty, and blues is the same way. And that's why we really, I think of it, we play the blues standards. I mean, they're evergreen, and there's so many of them, and of course it goes way beyond the thing that kills blues is guys get up and they do the same 8 songs that no one ever wants to hear again, like The Thrill Is Gone or Every Day I Have the Blues or whatever. Like there's so much more to it. It's kind of like in jazz when people get up and they do just the most worn out standard that no one wants to hear again. So we run up against the same problem, but but we love it so much, and gosh, you find new things all the time. I mean, I've been listening to Smokey Hogg did a song called Too Many Drivers. I could just listen to that all day, every day, all day. It's an amazing song, but I'd never heard it until, maybe 5, 6, 7 months ago. So there's always new stuff to find.
Right. And there's always new kids coming up. It's like Chris Stone, oh my God, Kingfish.
Yeah.
That kid's amazing. He came and sat in with the Peterson brothers one Monday happy hour, and I was totally blown away by him, and that was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. And those guys will find their way through it all,
Right.
They're young, so they'll find a different way to approach everything and how it pertains to their life,
Mm-hmm.
And they're great. I mean, we were on the road and we did several dates with Kingfish, and the things he sings about and so forth, they're from his life,
Right.
And so he's breathed fresh air into those things. And but we have a certain perspective that we come from, which is really, what it's rooted in. It's rooted in, the Austin blues scene of the Vaughan brothers and Denny Freeman and Lou Ann and Angela and Derek O'Brien and,
right.
Bill Campbell, all the people, that were doing it. And that's the lens we look at everything through.
Mm-hmm. So what were your biggest influences? Mike, let's hear from you first. Let Sue have a chance to think.
I know what Sue's going to say. I know exactly what she's going to say.
Really?
Absolutely. Why don't you go?
Us.
You know what I'm going to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
What, Memphis Minnie?
Yes. Memphis Minnie, that's Sue's, I will tell you that.
Yeah, Memphis Minnie's my favorite artist of all time, just because she was an anomaly. I love her music. I love her songwriting.
Uh-huh.
She was a lead guitar player back in the 1930s. I mean, I kind of like all those women from back then. I love Maybelle Carter as well. I love Memphis Minnie and older blues women, obviously.
Right.
And then all that Chicago blues and Texas blues, the stuff that we played in Austin, all those people that Mike mentioned, and then early Chicago blues. But, it just kind of runs the gamut. Like I've just listened, I still study all of it on a regular basis. We did, we're doing this Texas blues party, little promotion here.
Right.
But, we're doing that, and we started that in COVID quarantine, and that was just a way to pay tribute to all the great Texas blues artists. And, we started digging into that, and it's like, oh, great, we're playing Freddie King, and then we're playing, Albert Collins, and, it's just like one thing after another, Frankie Lee Sims. And so we spent the last 7 or 8 months just re-listening to all that stuff, and it's all coming back. And
mm-hmm.
I don't think you can listen too much. Like you just got to keep going and remember it and hold, and carry that
right.
flame for those guys.
I think it's the same as any career. You have to keep up with what's going on, but you have to also know your roots of where you came from in order to be authentic in what you do. And
Yeah,
I think that applies to any profession.
yeah.
But
Well,
certainly
we're
to music.
specialists. Yeah, we're specialists. We don't do, or I wouldn't say I'm a really, I can't do a lot of things. I'm a real specialist in a certain field. So, but I try to keep an eye on what's going on now. But honestly, Diane, I really don't follow it very much. I just see it.
I know a lot of people that don't.
Yeah.
They
She's
have
with
no interest.
Memphis Minnie to hit the top 10 still. She's still listening to Memphis Minnie. When I get in Sue's car, she has Memphis Minnie on, or the Carter Family. I think those two things, are usually on, and I don't think they've changed. And I think that's what maybe separates us in a way. Whatever our influences are, it's like you just hone in on really a handful of people that you listen to a lot. Not that we don't listen to everything, but you find yourself listening to the same stuff over and over again over the decades. And so you go, well, I guess that's my biggest influence, So like for me, it was, I have two sides that I have to pay attention to. It's kind of the Hammond B3 organ world and then the blues world. And I have to combine those two things, which really, honestly, I haven't seen anybody do before in that way. Like you see jazz organists, they might play Jimmy McGriff and Jack McDuff and Jimmy Smith and that. Mm-hmm. And then you've got blues guys who are doing, Jimmy Reed or whatever it is. But to combine those two things into something, because I love both those things and that's what I do. But so I listen to, in the organ world, I still listen to Babyface Willette and John Patton probably the most, and Freddie Roach. And then on the blues side, that's changed over the years, but probably these days it's people like Frankie Lee Sims and Mercy Baby, and like I was talking about, Smokey Hogg I really love, and then a lot of the Excello guys, Lazy Lester and Lightning Slim and Slim Harpo, Silas Hogan, the Houston guys, Lightning Hopkins. The Texas guys. And that what I think of as greater Texas, which is basically through Louisiana.
Right.
That area that we've all in Austin have really, starting with people like Luann Barton doing all the, Slim Harpo and things like that, and the T-Birds doing Scratch My Back. It goes back to that. And so those are still my favorites. Those type of guys.
Y'all got some good heroes there. That's a pretty round bunch of folks to be drawing influences from.
Yeah, and we're never going to get there, so it's always something to strive for, right? Like you're like, I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to be.
Well, when you get there, you die. That's the whole deal. So you don't ever want to get there. You want to keep trying to get there.
Well, the idea isn't try to be like them. It's to try to be like ourselves in the end. But we do strive to be as good as our heroes, and our heroes are way up there. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's as it should be. We all need something to strive for, something to see as our next level of achievement. Yes. So that's why we keep working at what we do.
Right. Well, and I think when you see, me and Sue were both fortunate enough to actually see, as well as yourself, you were the same way, we got to see these guys, which you could watch videos on YouTube or whatever now, but it really doesn't have the same effect as standing next to Albert Collins' quad reverb amp at Antone's and hearing him tear it up.
Or watching him with that 100-foot cord going out into the parking lot to play.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Following him out the door. And you know what? On that same line, then there's being at Hole in the Wall and watching the Reverend Horton Heat jump on top of Jimbo Wallace's upright bass, as Jimbo on his back with the bass on top of him scoots out into the middle of Guadalupe with the Rev standing on top of the bass.
Damn.
It's that same thing. It's like it defies genre. It's about that emotion that is evoked, and that's
Yeah.
what a lot of the greats had, was they were able to evoke emotion.
Yeah, they communicated with the audience. It's the thing that no one tells you when you start. You know, you just think that you have to play and then everybody's going to love it or whatever if it's good.
Right.
But you realize it's really less about that than sharing a moment with a group of people ultimately, you know. And Reverend Horton Heat's a great example. I saw him at the Library Club in Denton when I was in high school. I mean, it was so long. It's very early in his career. And that was one of the first roots bands that I saw. There weren't a lot of roots bands out there, as you know, at that time, you know.
Right.
And the Rev was just amazing to watch, you know, just spellbinding. And still is. I love him.
Still is. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
He's inspirational, you know, to watch these days because he's so positive and he's just out there working harder than anyone. You know, he was a great example when COVID hit. None of us knew what to do. There were a few people that just jumped on it, you know, and Reverend Horton Heat was one of them. He was figuring out live streaming. He was doing, you know, giveaways. He was, you know, he was doing it all almost on a daily basis. He was right there figuring it out and trying to do what he could, you know, which was inspiring because a lot of us were just sitting on the couch, you know, dumbstruck, you know, wondering, you know, I can barely check my email. How am I supposed to live stream?
I know Dale Watson has been like that too, where, you know, it's like, well, of course, he has that club in Memphis, Hernando's Hideaway. And so, you know, he's used to being on the road about 250 days a year, I would say. Mm-hmm. And so for him to just sit around and do nothing was impossible. So he started live streaming just about every single day of the week. Just because he had to keep himself busy and had to do something. And so, yeah, there are a few people. Jeff Blankenhorn is another one that's doing a great job of being very visible on live streams and doing a lot of different things. You know, there's something about, you know, one of the reasons that I do this is because, first of all, I want to be able to focus on our residency bands from the Continental Club Gallery and Sea Boys Heart and Soul, but also on our road shows, our touring bands, because they're hurting now too, of course.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we want everybody to know that when our doors are open again, these folks are coming back. You know, everybody's still got their spot. If they want it, it's there for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that is kind of the connection that I keep hoping for, is that we just keep everyone out there in the public eye. And this is an opportunity to get to learn a little bit something about the musicians that you didn't already know.
Right. Well, thanks for having us on. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to talk to you.
I'm glad to have you here, for sure. I've been missing y'all.
Yeah, likewise. We miss you guys so much.
Yeah, it's a tough transition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because we're also hooked on live music, that's, even though live streaming is here and it'll be here forever, it still doesn't create the same experience.
No, and it never can.
I don't think it ever can either.
No. Yeah. No, there's something so visceral about connecting to a live performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just impossible to recreate that in any other format.
Right. Well, and the other, you know, part of the equation that the audience never knew, I mean, the performers always knew it, but, you know, half of it is the audience. I mean, it's not just us on stage playing. I mean, you see minus the audience.
Uh-huh.
As we can't, you know, we're dancing circus animals, you know. ultimately we're hams. We perform for people. That's what we do. Like, so without the audience, it's very tough. I mean, some people are a little bit better at it. I think I'm pretty horrible at it. You know, I need somebody to perform in front of it. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, but it has to be somebody.
Humans.
Has to be somebody there. So, you know, the audience factor is huge. And it's also the whole experience. Going to the club, hanging out, seeing everybody, talking. I mean, when you go see a band, you see the band, but you see a lot of other stuff and you talk to people and, you know, maybe you go grab dinner beforehand and you have some drinks. It's just the whole thing, you know, it's not just seeing people play music.
Right. One of the things that I have found in doing this is that it has actually turned into something that's very much like sitting at the back door and everybody coming and sitting with me either before or after their set and just sitting and chatting with me. And that's kind of what this has felt like to me.
That's nice.
So it takes me back to that instead of being a little bit more formal. It's, you know, pretty relaxed and kind of, it is whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
Well, it's the next best thing. It's just like no different than when we FaceTime people that we can't see in person.
Right.
You know, on the phone when we're on tour, we FaceTime people, and
sure,
you know, it's as close as we can get, and it's a lot better than the old days when you just had to stop and call on the payphone. You know, so
better
it's
than nothing.
pretty good. It's
all
pretty
we
good
got right now.
and that's it. We got to go with whatever we got.
Right.
At least for now. So my next question is, what is your favorite song to play? Whether it's yours or somebody else's. There's always one song that like you get that actual visceral reaction from playing. Don't you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not sure it's a particular song, but probably a slow blues, if I can get it right, would be my favorite form to play.
Okay.
I can't think of a specific one. Like, it depends on whatever, you know, however I'm feeling or what the theme is. But a slow blues is the best for me. It's the best.
Cool.
Yeah, the same thing. I'll give you the Billy Gibbons answer, which is my favorite to play is my new single from my new album, West Texas Blues, which is true. I think that's my favorite song to do right now. It's a slow
Is
blues.
it?
And, you know, I've got a new record and a new t-shirt.
Yes. We were going there next because up here I have the links in the chat.
Oh, good. But back to your question, that is true. That's probably my favorite song right now to play. It changes, you know. We always love doing Thunderbird. I think that's always fun, you know, by the Nightcaps. So there's certain ones that just never get old. I mean, I can play
Queen Bee. I always like playing Queen Bee. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So, you know, whenever Jimmy Vaughn does Scratch My Back, I mean, I've heard it a million times. I love it every time. I mean, there's certain songs that are like that.
Right.
So
now, Mike, how did you connect with Jimmy?
Well, I was playing at the Continental Gallery, as you know, for many years, and Dave Biller was playing with me. And of course, Dave Biller is Jimmy's favorite guitar player, I think, you know. Can't say enough good things about Biller. So he came up to see Biller. Now, I want to say I didn't know Jimmy before then. You know, he was always the legend that he was like a phantom, you know. You would see him in his flamed out dually truck occasionally or something like that.
Right.
But, you know, he didn't really hang around Antone's on Guadalupe. You just didn't see Jimmy. You know, Jimmy was a mystery always. And, but anyway, he came up there to see Biller play, you know, the trio. And he came up a few times and I asked him if he wanted to sit in. And then he said, well, I don't really know, you know, what I'd play. Why don't you come over to the house and we can work on a couple, 3 things. And that way, when I come up, you know, I'll know what to do, you know. And so that's how it started, you know, basically. because he came and sat in, and then we started playing together up at the gallery initially. And I think Jimmy was looking for something new to influence his guitar style at the time. Because as you know, like Jimmy's had at least 3 different guitar styles over his career, you know, kind of the early Jimmy, you know, the T-Birds Jimmy, and then the solo career Jimmy with the capo, you know, and doing all that. And then I think after that, that was about when we started doing the trio, and he really started studying like Gene Ammons saxophone lines and different things like that, and how to get around the different kind of changes that we might do on something like Frame for the Blues or something like that, that's a little bit more harmonically advanced. And so I think that excited him, and so that's how it started. Really was just as simple as that. He started coming up, and we started doing gigs up there, you know, at the gallery.
And then Billy started showing up all the time.
Right, because Jimmy was there, right? Jimmy was up there, and he was like, what's happening? And so he started coming up, and of course, his father was a great piano player and one of the very first Hammond organ players in Houston. And so he always loved the Hammond organ because of his father, and I think just in general, he still has his father's Hammond. And he was just fascinated. He loved the Hammond sound. So, you know, Billy came up to the gallery, you know, when I was playing with Jimmy. That's how I met Billy. It's all a domino effect, you know.
Exactly.
Because as you know, everything kind of happened after that for me. I mean, I'd been sitting up in the gallery for 7 years, you know. No one came up,
Friday,
as you know.
Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, but once those guys stumbled on to it, and then I started playing with them, and then the doors kind of opened up. You know?
Right. Now, Sue, you've had collaborations of your own of great note. So let's talk about some of that.
Okay. Let's talk about, I don't know, where do we start?
Your collaborations?
Yeah, like right now.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you had some great collaborations on the Ice Queen record, of course.
Well, the Ice Queen was a big collaborative project, that's for sure.
Indeed.
And that was a lot to do with Mike. I mean, some of them, the people I knew, like Derek O'Brien and George Rains, like Derek and George produced my very first album, Young Girl Blues, for Antones back in 92.
Way back then.
Yeah, so I was coming back to Austin, and Mike and I connected. We were old friends. You know, we've been friends for 25 years. And I think the new Antones had opened, and Mike reached out to me and said, you know, you should come play the club. The club's open again, right? And so I looked Mike up, and I saw all the things he was doing, and then I heard his album, The Drifter. And I really liked it. I was very surprised because back when I lived in Austin earlier, Mike was a guitar player. And then I was like, he's a B3 player? Like, what is this? And what is this album? And I loved the sound of his album. So I was talking to him about it. You know, we just started texting back and forth saying, you know, I love your album. And then he's like, what are you up to? And I was like, well, I'm doing this and that. I was living in North Carolina at the time. And then I'd written some songs, and I showed him, and he says, well, you got to come back to Austin to do this. And he kind of helped, you know, of course, get Billy and Jimmy in on it, and Charlie Sexton and Chris Layton, and, you know, it sort of just snowballed, but it was really fun to have all that collaboration on that album. So we've collaborated a few times since then. And then prior to that, you know, it was early stuff I'd done with Antones, which was, you know, stuff with Pine Top Organs and Angela Straley on my first albums, and Kim Wilson, and playing in the Antones house band, which was, of course, I couldn't even describe how amazing that was for me when I was, you know, a young girl. So,
right.
You know, that was all really, really special time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we were all there.
For anybody, you know,
Yeah,
in the Anton's house band.
I know that was too much.
Yeah.
Clifford was so generous with me, but.
And Sue was the one who was playing with those. Like if you walked in and she would be playing with, her and Derek would be backing up Otis Rush, or, you know, the first night she got to town, Clifford threw her up with Albert Collins. I mean, so she was in the thick of it right away. We didn't get to play with those guys. I mean, me and Johnny Moeller I mean, maybe some, but we were like, you know, Sue was up there with the, you know, kind of the A team right away. We weren't really ready, but she was already.
Well, it turned out that Derek O'Brien and I had a very good chemistry as a guitar duo, and that we had figured that out very early on. When I first got to town, we played together, and it really clicked. And Clifford loved it. He thought, this is great. These two play really well together. So he would just put us up with everybody: Lazy Lester, Snooky Pryor, Jimmy Rogers, like you name it. He would always stick us up there as the part of the rhythm section. So I was very lucky. Yeah.
We hated you back then. No, she was, I mean, we talk about these things like it's yesterday. It's hard to fathom that was, you know, almost 30 years ago. But, you know, to be able to see those people play, or for Sue to get to play with them. And we played with some of those people, but, you know, it was a whole thing that influenced us, you know, to this day. I mean, that you just carry that around. It never leaves you, you know. Because you know what the bar is. You know what the real bar is.
It's pretty high.
Like, you know, it's pretty high. There's the relative bar, like, hey, we're doing pretty good. But if Albert Collins were to walk in here, it'd be a different story. Right. So, you know, everything's relative, but we know what the true bar is because we got to see it, you know.
One of the best shows I ever saw at Anton's was a very odd combination, but to say that it was one of the best, but it was Mel Brown, Derek O'Brien, and Matt Guitar Murphy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was mind-blowing.
I bet. Yeah. You just never knew what you'd get there, and all the chemistry of all the players that Clifford would mix together. You'd just be like, wow.
And Mel was on B3 at that time. Yeah.
He wasn't even sit down and play B3, and then, you know, of course, was a master guitar player.
Right.
Or organ player. Yeah, and he would just be hanging in the wings. You know, it'd be Denny and Derek, and maybe Mel would go up there for a while, and then he'd get down, and then, I mean, you just never knew what was going to happen. That was the beauty of it too, and it also influenced, I think, both of our thinking in the sense that, like, you realize that blues is a very in the moment fragile thing. Like, for any given show like that, some parts of it were working, some parts might not have been working, but it was all in the moment. You know, it wasn't planned out.
Right.
You know, it's not the type of music maybe at its best that's planned out. Not to say that, you know, B.B. King live at the Regal is not a great planned out, you know, performance in a sense, but to see that magic happen on stage. So when we play, we think of that all the time. We don't really want it all figured out, you know, and sometimes you crash and burn like that. But I think in the end, you can only get the highest level you can achieve when it's not planned out too much.
Right. I agree with that. And I also will say that sometimes the shows that crash and burn are the ones that people will talk about for years to come.
Well, it's true. And I always give credit to people if you see a performance like that, because they are trying to go somewhere, and it didn't work, but they're trying to achieve something, usually, you know, that is you know, worth trying to do. I mean, most performers, there's really only two kinds of performers: very consistent performers. You see them and they're, you know, And then there's people that are so inconsistent and you don't know what they're going to get. And it's either genius or a catastrophe.
Yes.
Right. And those, of course, are always the most interesting, you know, but it's a tightrope. I mean, I would love to be one of those people, but I'm not, you know, I mean, I'm too afraid to do that, to just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
You throw caution to the wind and the whole thing could be a mess. I mean, that takes a lot of guts.
But people will remember those moments fondly. Even, you know, no matter how bad it may get, there's a certain nostalgia attached to, oh, I was there. I saw that happen.
Well, that's true. It's memorable, right?
Memorable, absolutely. And it's the sort of thing that, you know, the audience can't plan it any more than the artist does. You know, you're either there or you're not. And you either got it or you didn't.
Right.
And so, you know, there is something to be said for that, you know, it's not always a bad thing to crash and burn.
Well,
and especially when you're expanding your boundaries by doing it.
Well, that's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Performing's always elusive, you know. I mean, you could play the same set, as you know, and
Right,
why is
right.
one night amazing and the next night's just kind of so-so, or maybe another night you would think is a bad night. You're playing the same songs with the same guys, but it's always different. I mean, that's always the fun of listening to music live or performing music live, because you could have the greatest day. Oh, I'm so well rested. I got something to eat, and now I got my nice outfit on. I'm happy with my outfit, and all my equipment's working. You know, and you go in and you have a horrible gig. You're like, or the exact opposite. I'm tired. I haven't slept. I'm wearing the same clothes for the last 4 days. We're on tour. You know, you're just miserable, and you could have the best show, you know, of your life.
And that's where the audience comes in a lot of the time. It's that feedback that you get from the people that really helps to feed your performance.
Oh, yeah. And give you energy. I mean, sometimes you could be so exhausted and the audience will just lift you up. They don't realize, like, it's like what Mike was saying. They don't realize how important they are, right? They
Right.
come to see these people on stage, or we come to see these people on stage. You don't realize I'm part of this. Like, it's all one thing, right? I think that's
that communal thing that happens with live music. And that is why it's impossible to capture any other way.
I know, and that's why we're missing it so much.
Yep. And so now you guys have a regular show going on over at Sagebrush, is that correct?
Yeah, we've been doing a Sunday afternoon residency. Not this Sunday, but coming in November, we'll be back every Sunday at 4 o'clock, and it's a super fun time.
At what time?
4 p.m.
4 p.m. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just went over to see a friend of ours play on a Monday over there. Of course, not very many places are open up that have live music. And that's a newer place. I mean, I know the building has been, there used to be Gill's Place, I think, many years ago, kind of a country bar, but I'd never been in there. So me and Sue walked in and we saw Dennis, the owner, you know, he asked us about playing there. And it's really a good setup for what's going on now, because it's very big on the inside and they can really space things out. And people are cool and respectful in there too. And then they also have a huge backyard area, which was originally going to be their parking lot. And then they just said, well, we'll have a big back area. So it's, for a Sunday afternoon, it's been great. I mean, they have a vintage, you know, booth, a bazaar. Yeah,
all in the back. It's all vintage clothes, and you know, people sell boots, and it's just very cool. There's all kinds of cool things for sale, records, stands.
It's practically in my backyard, and I still haven't been over there because I don't feel safe going anyplace yet. I have multiple issues with my weight and with my allergies and with autoimmune issues, and it's like not
Yeah.
safe for me.
No, that's too bad.
It's too bad, and it is good that I mean, I think this will have to go in stages, obviously, right?
Right.
And so you know, for people that I think to see a club that's able to open and do it where someone can walk in and feel safe,
Uh-huh.
you know, and not have that image in their mind of a college bar that's packed and everyone being crazy. I mean, that's when you say the word bar, we've during COVID, they always show us the packed college bar. You know, we don't see the other side, which is these guys responsibly trying to do it. I mean,
Right.
Steve doesn't want to irresponsibly open up his bar. Antones doesn't want to. You know, they've taken a lot of time and thought, and there are two things pushing against each other because we want to think that the Continental will survive. I mean, but the fact of the matter is it might not. I mean, reality is these places can't last indefinitely.
Right.
With no income. And so, you know, there's that fine balance where you're wanting to do things safe and you're not trying to really push the envelope, but you're trying to see what can be done in a safe way because so many places have closed, you know, and we all want the Continental and Seaboys and the Gallery to stay open and Antones and Saxon Pub and Broken Spoke, but we've lost a lot of places. And I think we like to think in Austin, of course the Broken Spoke will stay open, of course the Saxon Pub, of course the Continental, of course Antones. But we have to realize that they're really up against a major problem. Yep. And we have to be realistic, you know, about that. So we have to give all our support, you know, to guys like Steve, you know, Will Bridges, these people, you know, Dennis over the stage for us trying to do something and do it correctly because, you know, like you said, we're looking at 2021 and I can't believe these places lasted this long. I mean, let's be honest, like it's been 7-8 months.
Right.
How Steve's managed to do it, God bless his heart. You know, I know he's done everything he can. But we can't take it for granted that they're going to be here. We just can't. We can't
and you know, the only thing I will say about that is that if we were going to lose anything, we would be certainly in jeopardy of losing the Gallery and Seaboys before we would the Continental Club.
Right. Yeah. Steve owns
it. You know, he owns the building and the land that it's on, so that makes a big difference.
Right.
But, you know, even when he was awarded grants, which he was one of the fortunate ones that did get it, he was only allowed to apply for one venue.
Right.
So the money he got for one venue is what's having to keep 3 alive.
Yeah.
So it's pretty touch and go, you know, you don't know from one day to the next what's going to happen, what next axe is going to fall.
Yeah, it's anybody's guess, and anybody that says they know what the future is going to bring is out of their minds. None of us know what will happen. It's all very fragile. I mean,
yes.
Anything that's reopening, we always feel like, you know, the hammer could fall tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
Any of it. So, you know, it's just the Wild West out there for now as far as answers go. But I think people are really trying to do their best and keep a you know, a positive, hopeful spirit about it all. I mean, good times come and go. Obviously, this is not the best time, but bad times before. And I think we'll get through it, you know, and we'll all be back at it sometime. We don't know when, but I think the main thing is it's just good to keep positive as much as you can. You know, I know it's hard sometimes, but just to keep a positive spirit, you know, it goes a long way.
It sure does. And I will say, you know, we've been very fortunate in that this Washington, D.C. artist, Steve Shook, just did a painting, and it's a Geeklay print that he did of the Continental Club front. And I loved it because it was with the front door open. I loved that.
Oh, right. Nice.
And so he's doing this for different clubs across the US, and they get 20% of the sale. So all of the ones that he does of the Continental clubs that of the Continental Club that sells, we get $8 out of every 40 that he sells the print for.
Right.
And then we have 3 shows coming up with Patty Griffin, and she's donating the money from those 3 shows. She's doing them from the Continental Club, and then the money is being split amongst 18 venues nationwide that she has chosen.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And so, you know, there's lots of things like that. Like Renfro just did a live stream the other day and donated all of the tips from that to us. You know, and of course, all the money that gets donated all goes to the employees. Steve's not taking any of that.
Yeah.
That's all going to the employees.
Wow.
So we're blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In many, many ways. Yeah. So guys, one last question for each of you, and it is, what advice would you give to any bands just coming up now in this particular time?
Stay in school. That's what I tell my son.
Well, that's a good one, Sue.
I mean, I don't know. It's not a great time to get into the business. It's not saying you shouldn't, but I think if there's a band that's coming up and they're young, they probably know more than I know about how to navigate all the technology and all the new platforms than I ever will. So I'll have to take some advice from them to try to stay alive.
I know I have to study to do what used to come naturally.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's a lot to get your head around.
Mike, you got anything to add to that?
Well, this is something actually me and Sue were talking about last night for young musicians, which is, I think it's very important when you start to be a sideman. Don't hop out and I'm going to be the center of attention and I'm starting my own band. Not that that can't work, but I mean, when Sue started, she was out with Mark Hummel. She was, you know, you're a sideman first. And I think you learn a lot as a sideman.
Right.
Even today, we still learn things when we back up other people. I mean, it's a very important skill to have as a musician, is to be a good sideman. It's really your main skill.
Right.
Even if you're a front person, which, you know, Sue's a great front person, but she can also back someone up, you know, really. And Jimmy Vaughn, you know, another guy is like one of the best sidemen ever, you know. But I think that would be my advice, is don't just focus on what you're doing. And, you know, it's important to learn other people's songs and other people's approach. And, you know, we came up under certain people that, you know, they were not easy on you, you know, as far as being their sideman. I mean, there was certain expectations. So I think that's really important, you know, really important as a musician, is to play with other people and to, you know, try and make music with other people.
Well, and I actually think that one of the best things you can do for yourself is learn how to be a frontman by being a sideman for a good frontman.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how you learn the tricks. That's how you learn how it's done the right way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you could probably not name a famous front person who wasn't a sideman.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and of course, Jimi Hendrix comes to mind immediately.
Yeah, right. He played with Little Richard and all sorts of people, right? The Isley Brothers.
He played with everybody at one time or another. Yes.
Yeah, you usually just don't jump out there and are amazing on your own. You know, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's happened, but not that anything that comes to mind. People want to. I'm going to jump out on my own and be amazing. That's what, you know, I think they fantasize about. But in reality, right, you're in, you know, you're in Little Richard's band for a while if you're lucky, you know, if you're really good.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this. I appreciate it so much. And
It's good to see you.
it's good to see you guys too. Good Lord. This is this is going on too long.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, hang in there, Diane, and we miss seeing you, but we'll see you again.
Oh yeah. And in the meantime, you can keep up with what Mike's doing at www.mikeflanigin.com, and to buy his new album is /store, and that's where you'll find it.
Yeah.
And then you can find Sue at suefoley.com, or you can actually join her Patreon at patreon.com/Sue Foley.
Thanks, Diane.
And so that's how you can help them. And for us, you want to help out the Continental Club, go to www.continentalclub.com, and you can click on the banner at the top, and it will take you to the page that says closed. And that's where you'll find all the information on our tip jars that go 100% to the employees. Or you can go to our merch page where you can buy all different kinds of Continental Club or Sea Boys merchandise, and the profits of all of those sales go to the Continental Club employees as well.
Yes.
And James McMurtry is donating through his Bandcamp EP, Blasted from the Past. 100% of the sales go to the Continental Club employees.
Wow.
Fantastic. Well, we love all our Continental Club employees, and we miss them, and it's so cool that y'all are doing, that all those things are happening. And Continental has cool merch too. I mean, you gotta get some of that merch.
So yeah, just y'all, if I'm going to be putting this up on all of our Facebook pages, and it will also be on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Continental Club ATX, all one word, no spaces. If you put spaces in, you're going to get a bazillion other videos.
Okay.
So
all right.
go to that one, and we'll see you there. And I'll be back next week with a really special show with Bill Monster Jones. And Bill is the husband and guitar player for Kathy Murray of Kathy and the Kilowatts. And he is a monster maker. And he's going to be here with some of his monsters, and he's going to be telling us stories about them. And it's a little bit different than the usual music thing, but in honor of Halloween coming up, next week we're doing that Halloween special.
Wow. Can you believe it's Halloween? I cannot believe it.
I know. Is that crazy?
Unbelievable.
Well, y'all take care of yourselves, and we'll see you down the road.
Bye, Diane. Thank
Bye.
you.